do we see here? It's basically two big waves of startups in the 70s and 80s, then a very flat movement. And we had sort of a regain of reactor startups in the past few years, with so far in 2018, 9 reactors that started up. At the same time, we see a very large number of reactors getting off-grid in 2011. This is exactly the same graph, except we're looking at the specific role of China in this development. And it's not complicated. I mean, as you see immediately, is if you take China out, nothing happened over the past 25 years. Absolutely nothing. I mean, the small numbers of reactors that have started up is very insignificant. So the big change that happened is China's program. If you look at 2017, 3 of the 4 reactors were Chinese reactors to start up. The 4th one was in Pakistan, built by Chinese companies. In 2018, 9 reactors started up so far. Of those 9 reactors, 7 were in China, 2 were in Russia. So it is really, statistics have been dominated by China over the past decade. Now, when we come to electricity generation, we see here in red the production, and which peaked in 2006. No surprise, it matches the year that the largest capacity was installed. We have seen then the decrease after 3/11 and an increase over the past 5 years. At the same time, we see that the nuclear share in global commercial electricity generation. We always use the term commercial electricity generation because, I give you an example. We have a cabin from the 19th century in the Canadian bush, and we're generating solar power there for the past 30 years. That has never gone through any meter. So it's non-commercial electricity generation. So in fact, there's a lot more electricity generation, and especially solar has become very popular in many countries that are not grid connected. So the actual number is much larger than currently. So we're talking only the share of commercial electricity, peaked in 1996. So over 20 years ago, at about 17.5%. Currently we stand at around just over 10%, although the difference 10 to 10.3 is probably statistically insignificant. If we do the same exercise and we look at the role of China, the results shows that over the past 3 years, global electricity generation by nuclear power plants has actually declined. The increase in China alone was sufficient to pull the global numbers into the positive. But it remains extremely small, right? A 1% increase in 2017. And it fell by 0.4% outside of China. You know, the question is obvious, how many reactors are actually operating? International organizations, governments, take the International Atomic Energy Agency as the reference. So when they use numbers of reactors in operation, they go to this online database, which is called PRIS, the Power Reactor Information System. And it says on the home page, X number of reactors, nuclear power reactors in operation, right? And then you can go select country and you can go into Japan and you get to this page. And it says 42 reactors operational. Now, operational, I don't know what you imagine what operational could be, but you know, we would think that that means generating power, right? Generating electricity. Now, so the surprising thing here is that when you look at the amount of electricity, like the share of electricity generated by nuclear power in 2017, it's 3.6%. 42 reactors generating 3.6% of the electricity in the country. That's pretty surprising, isn't it? Well, the reason is very simple. The reality looks quite different from that. This is the power generation and the installed capacity in Japan in nuclear. So you see that it has been actually, after the catastrophe in Fukushima, it has been going down to 0 in 2014. And since, a few reactors have started up. But even then, like right now, there's 9 reactors operating. But the electricity generation in 2017 is barely more than are being generated by 2 nuclear reactors in other countries. So the actual amount of electricity remains very low in this case. So we think this is highly misleading. We suggested in 2014 a new category which we call long-term outage. It means that it has a physical definition. A nuclear power plant that has not generated any power for a whole calendar year, plus 6 months of the present year of our annual report. We take it out of the statistics as an operation and we put it into the category of long-term outage. And when we did this in the beginning, one reaction we got was to say, well, this is like a Japan category, right? It's not relevant for the rest of the world. Well, it is. You can see as of 1st of July, there were 26 reactors in that category, shut down, by the way, between 2007 and 2013. So some of these reactors have actually not generated power for 10 years, but they're still in the statistics as in operation. That's not really reality. That doesn't reflect reality. But besides those reactors in Japan, we have also 2 reactors in India and 1 each in Argentina, France, China, and we had one for a long time, Xinjiang 1, where the last power generation was in 2014, and which is now closed because the license ran out. If we look into the future, we're looking at reactors that are in the statistics as under construction. We see this huge mountain of reactors in the statistics in the middle of the 1970s, and then a drop to a level in 2005 that we haven't seen since the 1950s, since the beginning of the nuclear age in the 1950s. Then we've seen this kind of increase, which we have analyzed earlier. We have seen the Chinese program kicking in. And we have seen 68 reactors under construction in 2013, and from then it went back down. I should mention, obviously, that here you see 2 colors. Blue are the reactors that have actually been connected to the grid. The reddish color is reactors that have been abandoned, where construction has been abandoned in the course of the work. It's quite astonishing, but about 1 in 8 reactor projects has been abandoned during construction. This is not reactor orders, this is actually construction. And by construction, the technical definition of construction is the concreting of the base slab, the foundation of the reactor building. Only then, when this is starting, the reactor is considered under construction. So we're talking not about projects that have been abandoned before, like in the course of planning or after order, where orders have been abandoned. The number of orders that have been cancelled is in the order of magnitude of over 250. So it's a long history of abandoned projects, actually. The total number we have calculated now is standing at the middle of the year by 94. 94 abandoned construction sites. The last one was in 2017 with 2 reactors that started building in the United States after spending $5 billion. I repeat, $5 billion the 2 reactors in South Carolina have been abandoned. So who's building? No surprise here. We still have China as the only really big country building. This is the status as of July 2018. Since then, 4 more reactors have started up. So as we speak, the total number of under construction is now 12 in China. Number 2 is India, but India has a relatively bad construction record. It takes them a long time to build, and we will see that later as well. And it's relatively small reactors, so it remains relatively insignificant in the overall program. So what we see as well is some of these constructions have started quite a long time ago. We see here Slovakia in 1985. So it takes a long time, sometimes, to build these things. That's over 30 years. When we assess this in more detail, we always, every year we look at the performance, the construction performance over the past decade. So over the past decade, there were 55 reactors that started up. 31 of them started up in China. 31 in 10 years. That's a really amazing performance internationally, especially if you compare that with any other country. 7 reactors started up in Russia. The performance is a little less impressive, with an average construction time of 24 years. 24 years, that's pretty much. I mean, if you look at financing of these projects, you know, you have to advance money for the entire time of these projects, so it's not really good business card. And we come back to India with 5 reactors and an average construction time, pretty high too, at around 10 years. Next indicator is construction starts and cancellations. Now, we always see the same pattern, isn't it? We see these peakings in the 1970s, and then we have this flat development starting with the end of the 1990s. We see that, you know, of these reactors, the color, the light blue color is reactors that are still under construction. The dark blue is construction completed, and the reddish part is constructions that have been abandoned. So we have, besides these long-term Slovakian projects, we also have a number of reactors that are way over 10 years now. One in India, one in Finland, one in Japan, one in France, and a couple in Russia. Take the same graph and look at China, China's role. It becomes very clear that also in this parameter, China is entirely dominating the statistics. 10 out of 15 construction starts in 2010. So the only thing we do here is we say, well, if reactors operate for 40 years and are shut down, and all of the reactors that are currently under construction are completed and have a 40-year lifetime, this is the balance what we would have to build in order to break even. So in order not to go downhill, right? So just to maintain the level of operating reactors and capacity. And so we see that we're sort of falling short by 12 reactors. 2 gigawatts is not much, but 12 reactors until 2020. But it's especially the decade after. The decade after would mean we would have to build 190 reactors. I mean, this means building and connecting to the grid, right? 190 reactors. Now remember, the past 10 years, 55 reactors were connected to the grid. That's history, that's reality. So it means that if the industry was to break even, it would mean a construction scheme that would be 3.5 times higher than what history has shown in the past decade. If the industry says they can do it, fine, but then they have to come up with some evidence. I haven't seen that evidence yet. So it's quite likely that under that conditions it would go downhill.